Hello YouTube, this is Squirrel. I'm going to be coming at you with another Dwarf Fortress video today. We're going to be installing Dwarf Fortress and also going through the Lazy Newb pack along with all of the enhancements that it brings to Dwarf Fortress. So let's jump right in. As you can see here, I am at the Dwarf Fortress website. I'm going to put the link here in the description. It's bay12games.com/dwarves. And if you go to the download page, you'll see that there's three options right at the top: Windows, Linux, and Mac. Just click the version for your particular operating system. I'm going to be going over the Windows installation because that's what I'm running. When you click on that, it's going to download a zip file, so just make a note of where you have saved that. So I have it here on my desktop, right here, and so you're just going to right-click on that and hit Extract All. You're going to put in the name of the folder that you want to extract this to. And it's going to take a minute or two for that to go. And then when that's done, you'll have this folder either on your desktop or whatever folder you decide to put it in. And this is all of the files that are needed to run Dwarf Fortress. So you just double click on the Dwarf Fortress icon here, and that will launch the game itself. If you want a shortcut to get to it, you can also click and drag it onto your desktop. And then what you want to do is hold down the Alt key when you let go. That's going to create a shortcut on your desktop, and then you can launch the game directly from there. If you do move the folder, you'll have to create a new shortcut. So I'm just going to close this down here. Close, please. That might run for a little while. That's fine. Okay, there we go. Putting that. So what I'm going to show you here is actually the Lazy Newb pack installation. The Dwarf Fortress Lazy Newb pack has been, there's 3 different distributions of it based on which operating system that you're on. And each distribution is actually maintained by a different developer. The one that I'm going to be doing is the Windows version, the Paradexis Errant Starter Pack. So you just click on that little icon there, click download the latest starter pack here, and then download now at the top of that page, and that's going to download the starter pack of whatever the most recent version is. I already have it downloaded, so I'll just take you to that file now. So this, again, is going to give you a zip file, and same thing if you're just like if you're installing the base game, you can just extract that. Now, if you download this Errant Starter Pack, you don't actually need to download the base game itself. The starter pack does include the base game. So that's going to extract onto your desktop, and I'm just going to minimize all that because I've already got that finished. So I have here just a shortcut, just like you did with the Dwarf Fortress shortcut. There's a launcher in there, and you just hold down Alt and drag that to your desktop to get a launch button for that. So you double click on that to open, and this is going to actually start the Dwarf Fortress launcher, which has a whole bunch of options in it, and we're going to go through everything in here and just talk about what everything does. So I'm just going to start it with the default settings here. So on the first tab here we have options, and under the options, just some basic stuff here. So the population cap sets the maximum population in your fort. The default on here is usually pretty good, but if you're on a machine that is older, you can definitely turn that down. I wouldn't go below 100 or so. Some of the calculations just get a little weird if you do that. The child cap, similarly, this is the maximum number of children in your fort. So you can have dwarf children running around, and then the strict population cap is kind of tied to that. So basically, if you have a population cap of 200 and then a strict population cap of 220, what this will mean is you can have up to 200 adult dwarves and 20 child dwarves, but you will have a maximum of 100 child dwarves total because of this setting here. So you can play with those to limit the growth of your fortress. The more dwarves you have, the slower everything runs. But if you have an up-to-date modern computer, that should not be an issue. So the defaults here are going to be fine for most folks. The visitor cap here, this is a limit on generic visitors to your fortress. Sometimes you can get diplomats from other civilizations that will come to your fortress. merchants, traders, that sort of thing, as well as people that will just come there to live permanently. This will put a cap on how many of those you can have show up. Invaders here, this setting is going to affect whether or not you get goblins periodically coming and attacking your fortress. There are other invaders that can show up other than goblins, but goblins are just kind of the most common. And so you can turn that off if you want a little bit of an easier game. I would recommend leaving that on. Part of the fun of Dwarf Fortress is the fact that it is difficult, and the fact that your dwarves will die in horrible, terrible ways, and you wouldn't want to limit the horrible, terrible ways that they could die. So I would leave those on for sure. Again, the caps here for invasion soldiers and invasion monsters will just limit how many dudes can come and attack your village. Again, it's one of those, if you've got an older machine, you can turn them down. Turning those down does actually make the game a little bit easier too. Once you get very, very late in the game, when you might actually have 120 goblins coming to attack, initially you're going to be looking at like 10 goblins. So, you know. But if you want a little bit of an easier end game, you can turn that down as well. Cave-ins. Cave-ins disable whether or not earth can fall in from above if you fail to properly support the ground above when you're digging out large rooms. This is another one of those mechanics that's kind of fun. Like it's one of those, you're gonna screw it up at first. You're probably gonna have a couple cave-ins, but you can use that to kind of teach yourself how the system works. I like leaving that on. Temperature affects whether or not things melt, burn, freeze, etc. This can actually make things more difficult in the beginning of the game. Like if you are in a place where you have a river and you're relying on it for fishing and for water, if you turn temperature off, you'll have water all year round, but if you turn it on, your river might freeze over when winter comes. So, weather just adds rain and snow. One of the nice things, one of the nice things about having rain on is if your guys are outside, while yes, they will get wet, they'll also wash off any kind of contaminants that they might have on them, which is kind of nice. Entomb pets, that just lets you bury pets in coffins. When you create a coffin, you have to make it available for burial, and this automatically includes pets in that making things available option. Artifacts, occasionally dwarves will enter strange moods, where they will claim a workshop and you'll have to supply them with materials for building a special project. If you leave this on, they'll do that. The thing about the special objects is they'll become attached to them. It will increase the value of your fort. They're kind of cool, but at the same time, if you don't have the right materials and you don't have the right workshops when the dwarves enter these, what they're called, strange moods, the dwarves could go crazy and just start attacking folks because they're insane, because dwarves are crazy. Aquifers is actually one that I would turn off for new players. One of the difficulties with aquifers is there is water pressure that you have to deal with, and if you don't deal with an aquifer properly, if you run into it, it could really mess up your fort and basically end your game instantly. So they are underground sources of water that take up nearly an entire level. And if you dig into them, they have pressure, so you have to have some way to alleviate that pressure, let the water out if you do dig into those. Graze coefficient just scales how long grazing animals need to eat. If you have larger numbers, it's a number of ticks. So the game operates in ticks. The speed at which these ticks occur depend on a number of factors, mainly your processor, how fast your processor is. So every 100 ticks, your animals that graze will have to eat. If you set this to a higher number, they'll have to eat less often. If you set to a lower number, they'll have to eat more often. And then the last one here is the starting labors. So when your dwarves come into the world, they will come in with some skills already on them. You're going to start with 7 dwarves. You'll get more dwarves later. When your dwarves show up, they'll have certain labors turned on or off. So you can designate whether or not they have any, so you can set labors completely off if you want complete control over that. You can set it based on their skills, so if a dwarf has a skill in a particular job, then they will come on with that job enabled. And then you can do it by unit type, so each dwarf will have a title, such as lumberjack or hunter or mason or miner or some such, and using by unit type will automatically enable labors appropriate to that dwarf's title. The bark profiles here, these are just things that are included with the Lazy Newb pack. These are sets of items and skills that your dwarves can start with. When you first start, your very first run through, I recommend using one of these. On future playthroughs, you can go through the point buy system where you're allocated a certain number of points and you spend those points on things like food and picks and animals and that sort of thing. But these are very useful when you're first learning the game, so I would definitely leave those on. Key bindings down here at the bottom. There's options here for if you're using a laptop which does not have a number pad, which will affect the key layout. There's also an option for if you're using a laptop with a mouse, and for vanilla DF is just your standard QWERTY keyboard with number pad and everything on there. So that's all of the options tab. Moving on to the graphics tab. So this is the tab in which you choose your graphics. By default, Dwarf Fortress actually uses ASCII graphics. So the dwarves are little smiley faces. Like there's everything is represented by different characters of different colors. But some people have a really hard time reading and understanding that. So there are graphics packs that have been created. There's a bunch of different options here. You can play around with the ones that you like. So you can either choose a pre-built graphics pack, or you can go over here to customize, and you can pick different sets for your font and for your graphics font. So your font is the actual text font that you will see in menus and that sort of thing, and then the graphics font is the actual tile set, so the actual pictures of the dwarves and the animals and the rocks and all that kind of stuff. So down here, once you've selected the graphics option that you want, you hit this install graphics option, and it will install that option onto your set. If you already have a game that you're playing, that you're in progress on, you can hit update save games, and it will apply that graphics pack to all of the saves that you have. Refresh just refreshes the list. If you download additional graphics packs, you would just click this open folder option and put the graphics packs in here, and then you'd hit refresh, and then they'd reappear on the menu here. These options down here at the bottom apply regardless of which graphics pack you choose. So the liquid depth, by default it's off, and you'll just see any liquid as the liquid itself. So water, lava, you'll just see like the little blue icon or the little red icon. If you have liquid depth set to yes, you will actually see a colored number instead, which will tell you the depth of the liquid. I actually like having that on. It's very useful when you start playing with lava and water, which you will do. You can use lava to run forges and water for cleaning doors up. Your doors will need water for medical purposes, that sort of thing. And if I like to build moats on my fort, and having the liquid depth there is very handy for seeing how deep the moat is. Varied ground just means that if you're using a ground tile set that has a bunch of different types of ground, it will use different pictures, which gives your ground kind of a more interesting look. Might as well leave that on. Hide engravings, I would leave that off. Basically what that does is it keeps the it makes the when your dwarves go through and smooth out and then engrave the ground or the walls, if you have this on, it won't show you anything to indicate that those areas are engraved. If you have it off, it will. I like having hide engravings off so I can see what areas I've improved and what areas I haven't. And same thing with items. that's just when you look at an item, you can use that to see. It'll add a little tag at the end of the item that just indicates the quality of the item. Again, very, very useful, particularly when you go trading, to be able to just look at the list and pick out the high quality items. So I would leave that on. Print mode. There are four different options on here. There's 2D, there's standard, there's TWBT, which stands for text will be text, and then there's TWBT legacy. So 2D enables true type fonts for your text. That doesn't apply to the graphics. So which can make things line up a little nicer. Standard enables some advanced graphics tools based on the graphics set they're using. Text will be text forces texts and graphics to use different tile sets, which is actually really nice because sometimes if you're using a single tile set for both, the game will get confused and it won't know which tile set to use. So you might have this beautiful looking fortress and there's just a C in the middle of it for cat, because for some reason it couldn't find the icon for a cat, so it decided to use the old text icon. And then TWT Legacy is just an older version of the same thing. So this true type fonts, this can only be used if you have your print mode set to 2D. It toggles whether or not you want to use the normal fonts or the tile scent fonts for your text. Simplify graphics folders just goes through your graphics folders and cleans out old temporary files. You can use that if the folder is just getting too big. Moving on to the utilities. So the utilities are all plugins that are available to you that can enhance your game in various ways. So Amarok Vision is a 3D representation of the fortress. You don't actually use this while the game is running. It's just a visualizer, so it loads your fortress into it, and you can check out your fortress in 3D. I found this to be really freaking laggy, but it's kind of cool to be able to see the three-dimensional view as opposed to the two-dimensional view that you see while you're actually playing the game. DF Story Maker goes through all of the logs in the game and pulls out everything that's related to your fortress. So when you create a fortress in Dwarf Fortress, the game generates a history for your fort. It's going to generate important people, places, civilizations, etc., and simulate events that happen to those people and places every year. Dwarf's DF Story Maker specifically goes through and only pulls out the things that are related to your fort, which are events that you will have played through. So you can go back through an old save, use this to basically reconstruct the story of what had happened with your fort. It's a pretty cool tool. Dwarven Realms. This is a new thing that recently got added. Dwarven Realms takes the world map that's generated when you first create your game and actually creates a playable Minecraft map of your world. Now, it doesn't actually create the fortresses that you build. It just creates the overall world map. But still kind of a cool little concept. Dwarf Mockup. I'm going to be talking about going a little bit out of order here now. So there's three ones here that kind of work in conjunction. So I'm going to talk about Quick Fort first. So Quick Fort is a utility that allows you to design forts, design blueprints for your forts, and then import those blueprints into the game as build orders. So you can design your fortress outside of game and then load up the game, load up Quick Fort, pull in your blueprint, and then apply it to the map, and then it'll issue build orders out on the map. It does support building in phases, so you can issue like the first set of digging orders, and then you can issue, say, like the workshops and then like the furniture, that sort of thing. Or you can do like different layers at a time. And then these other two, Dwarf Mockup and Perfect World, are both used to create blueprints for Quick Fort. So just two different utility styles. Kind of a cool tool if you want to play with it. I like building things on the fly, but if you would like to check those out, that's what those do. Dwarf Portrait. It's kind of a quirky little thing. It takes the descriptions, the randomly generated descriptions of your dwarves, and pulls out all of the physical characteristics and makes little 2D models of your dwarves. Kind of weird looking, kind of interesting. It is what it is. Dwarf Therapist. Dwarf Therapist is a very, very powerful tool that is useful for managing dwarf job assignments. One of the things that is weird about Dwarf Fortress is the interface can sometimes be a bit terrible. Dwarf Therapist alleviates a lot of that, though, particularly when it comes to the job assignments thing. It provides a very nice, clean, menu-driven interface for managing all of your dwarf jobs. Highly recommend using and getting used to this tool. It's very, very powerful and very, very cool. IsoWorld. IsoWorld is a utility that generates isometric maps of your game world that you can check out. Again, this is the game world, not the fortress, so Armok Vision was a 3D representation of your fortress. IsoWorld is a 3D representation of the world itself. Legends Browser and Legends Viewer are, again, two mods that are very similar. They both allow you to go into basically like an encyclopedia of the lore that's been generated for your game world. Legends Browser tends to be better for seeing big picture stuff. It tends to be the interface for seeing the big world stuff is better, whereas Legends Viewer I find is better for drilling down into specific legends about specific individuals, particularly like if you end up having one of those artifacts that we talked about earlier. They'll come with engravings on them, and then you could go into the Legends Viewer and see, okay, who was that dude that we just made this cool carving of? It's a dwarf chopping off a giant's head. Well, I want to read about what happened with that. You can go into Legends Viewer and see and read that story. Perfect World is a tool that a lot of players consider to be cheating. It lets you go into the randomly generated world file and edit it. So up to you whether you want to actually use that or not. We've already talked about Picture Fort and Quick Fort. So the last two here are SoundSense GTK and SoundSense. These two, again, are very similar. They are programs that you will launch externally, and what they do is they read the log files of the game, and they will generate or they will play sounds based on the things that pop up in the log files. So like if someone's fighting, it'll play fighting noises, that sort of thing. SoundSense GTK is my preferred one between those two because it lets you go into each sound channel independently and disable sounds that you don't particularly want, ones that you find annoying, that kind of thing. It also lets you change the volume on each sound channel independently, so if one's coming through really loudly, you can go through and tweak that pretty easily. So that's all of the utilities. And again, we have this utilities folder. Click the button to open it. If you want to download additional utilities, you can put their files in here, and then refresh list down here will open refresh the list to add that thing to it. And if you click open README, when you have an item selected, it will open the README file for that particular program. And you can either double click on the program to launch it, or you can just hit run program here and it'll run it. Or if you want it to automatically launch when you start the game, you just right click it and it turns green, like so. Advanced settings. Give me one moment for a cough. Sorry about that, I'm just recovering from a cold. Okay, so we're looking at 24 minutes so far. Whew. Okay, so sound. This is pretty basic, on and off. This option here is for the music volume. The startup here, intro movie and windowed. Right. I should mention, if you're using SoundSense, you should probably have the sound off here because the game does have music built into it. If you turn that off, it'll turn the game music off, and it'll play the music out of SoundSense instead. So when you start the game, when you saw earlier, there was a little intro movie that launched. Cool little thing. I'd watch it once and then turn it off. So windowed tells the game whether or not it wants to launch in windowed mode. which that's really up to your preference. FPS counter allows you to turn on or off the FPS counter in the game. I like having it on just so I can see what type of performance I'm getting, and if the FPS drops too low, like I can tell if the game's lagging, or if I maybe need to go in and turn off some of the advanced features just to speed the game up a little bit. So there are two different FPS caps here that you can plug in. The top one is the calculation cap, which is how fast the game does its math. This will determine how fast the game runs. The second one is the graphical one, which is how fast the game visually updates. Note the distinction there. So the game is, in this case, it's taking 2 ticks for every 1 refresh of the screen. If you want to see every single refresh, you would make those 2 match. Yeah. And if you put a lower value in here, it will make the game run faster because it doesn't have to redraw as often, and redrawing is a very machine intensive thing. But you will have input lag unless you pause the game if you keep that number too low. So I found the defaults to be just fine there, though. So resolution here is for when you are launching in windowed mode, it'll tell the game what size of a window to do. For the save related stuff, autosave, there's a couple different options here, and this is just how frequently you want the game to save. It should be noted that when the game does save, it lags really, really, really badly. Like, it's going to look like your game is frozen, particularly if it's your very first seasonal save. However, the game, particularly if you end up loading a bunch of the utilities or a bunch of the DF hack stuff that we're going to talk about later, and probably in depth in another video, the game will crash from time to time, and it can be very frustrating to lose a ton of progress. So I would definitely advise keeping the autosave on seasonal. So initial save, this toggles on or off whether or not you want the game to save as soon as you start playing for the very first time. Again, it's one of those, you've probably put a lot of effort into your Embark profile, so it's generally a good one to keep on. Pause on save is very handy, being that it can take sometimes up to a couple minutes for the game to save when it does do that. Pause on save essentially allows you to, walk away, go get a sandwich or whatever. And when you come back, you'll know that the game isn't just running in the background and things are going crazy because you walked away from your computer for a few minutes. I like to keep that on. Basically, as soon as it's done doing its save, the game will pause itself. This also pauses the game as soon as you launch it for your very first run. Pause on load, again, this will pause the game when you do any kind of future launches. Backup saves, keep that on. No one likes losing your saves. And then compress saves here, you can just keep that on unless you're running into any kind of issues with save file corruption, then I would turn that off. But this just makes your saves take up a bit less space. Yep. And then open save game folder, you can see all of the saves that you have going. I actually don't have a current game running right now on this install of it, so that's all going to be blank. Processor priority here just adjusts the amount of priority that's given to Dwarf Fortress by your operating system. I usually leave this at normal, but if you want a little bit more performance, you can pop that up. I like leaving it at normal because that frees up more processor space for recording videos. And then Process Legends exports just takes all of the files from Legends mode, sorts them, and compresses them. Makes them a little easier if you want to say take your Legends file and move it to a different machine. So you want to take your generated world and play with it on a different computer. You could use that to compress all the files and compile them. Okay, DF hack. So DF hack has a lot of very interesting commands in it. Many players consider a lot of them to be cheating, and quite honestly, there are quite a few things in there that are cheating. There are a lot of things in there that are just quality of life enhancements also, because Dwarf Fortress can end up being a very micromanaged, heavy game. Particularly later on in the game, when you have a very large fortress running, it can be handy to have some of the enhancements that DF Hack brings running. I am going to be doing a full video later that's probably going to be about a half hour or so going through all of the options in DF Hack. This is just a overview of the ones that are specifically available to turn it off through the Lazy Newb pack. So just like we did with the utilities, you would actually in this one you just right click to enable or disable any of the options in here. So automatic job assignments enables the auto labor plugin, which is one of the DF Hack ones. Essentially what that does is it automates all of your job management for you. So if you put out a job and there's no dwarf available to take that job, it will look at the dwarves that are idle. It will assign the dwarf that has the highest skill in that job and turn on the labor for that particular dwarf. It also tries to maintain about a 33% of your dwarves with the hauling skills enabled. So that's automatic job assignments. Again, that's that enables the auto labor. Now, one thing about that, it does try to keep your dwarves specialized in specific skill sets. So if they have hunting, for example, then they'll probably have butchering as well. If they have fishing, they'll have fish processing, that sort of thing. So it kind of groups some skills together. And when you end up with a very large fortress, maybe sometimes you might not want that. Maybe you want one team of dwarves who's fishing and another team of dwarves who's processing all the fish that are coming in. That's a decision you'll have to make. It's handy for new players, but I would actually advise starting the game with that off and just using Dwarf Therapist instead to manage labors yourself. The reason for that is when you're using auto labor, you don't have as much of an eye on your dwarves themselves, and you can kind of become detached from your dwarves. And I think it's just a lot more fun to have that personal touch, that extra oversight in kind of getting to know your dwarves and what they're good at. Enhanced gameplay. So enhanced gameplay enables an option which adds some more NPCs to the game for you to interact with. So it adds human traders. Normally the game only starts with elven and dwarven traders, and it also enables elven diplomats. Elven diplomats are really annoying because they will show up and tell you, hey, we don't want you to cut down any more trees. And then if you cut down more trees and they come back next year and found that you cut down trees, they will be mad at you and either refuse to trade with you, or their standings with you will decrease and they'll charge you higher prices. Kind of annoying. If you leave that off, you'll only ever get dwarven merchants in. So up to you whether you want that on or not. It's just a little bit of a difference in the way the game runs. Hide DF console, I would actually keep that off. The DF Hack console will run behind your game by default, and if there are any error messages that are popping out of any of your DF Hack plugins, you'll want to be able to see those easily. So I would definitely leave DF Hack console off. Mouse controls. This is really nice if you have under your options, if you picked the laptop with mouse option. The mouse controls are nice to go with there. One of the big things that it lets you do is you can move your mouse to the side of the screen to scroll as opposed to having to use the arrow keys. That can be handy. Again, it's one of those player preference things. I prefer playing with the mouse because it gives me, or playing with the keyboard because it gives me a little bit more precise control when I'm trying to figure out sizes of rooms and that sort of thing. Sorry about that buzz. The dryer just finished. Hopefully that didn't come through on the video. All right, multi-level view. Shows multiple levels at once can cause your game to crash. I don't like it. Up to you if you want it on or not. That's what it does. I leave it off just because I don't like my game crashing. Other automation plugins. This enables two different plugins, which are kind of handy. The first one is Auto Nest Box. What Auto Nest Box does is it automatically assigns egg-laying fowl to any pasture zones that you set up near your nest boxes. This is actually really handy because every time eggs hatch, you have a plethora of chickens or ducks or turkeys running around your fortress, and then you have to track them all down, and you have to reassign them back to their pasture to get them all corralled in one place. Having Auto Nest Box on automatically assigns all of the female chickens, which are the ones who would lay eggs, which are the ones you want next to the nest boxes, to just hang out in that area, which you're going to want if you're going to do any sort of egg production in your fortress. You can also butcher the chickens, which by all means go ahead, but the I find that the egg production is very, very handy for some of the higher level foods. The second option that other automation plugins enables is the plugin Burial. And what Burial does is if you build a coffin and the coffin is not currently being used, it will mark the coffin as being available for burial. For some reason, when you build a coffin, that's not automatically turned on. I believe that is so that you can take coffins that you make, and if you make one of high quality, you can assign it to a particular dwarf. So, like if you wanted to build a crypt for a particular dwarf who is a great warrior, or maybe you had a noble or something like that. So, it's if you did have that instance, you would have to go in and disable the available for burial option on that particular coffin so that you could use it as a crypt marker. But in general, it's a good one to have on. Performance tweaks. Performance tweaks makes your game run faster, but messes with a bunch of the simulation items in the game. I would only turn this on if you're actually showing performance issues. So it does fast heat, which messes with the way that temperature spreads throughout your fortress. Dump worn items, which automatically causes items, clothing that are worn out, to get taken off to the dump. And then remove all contaminants, which actually really messes with the simulation. Whenever a dwarf either is digging or gets itself involved in combat, it will get mud and gore and all sorts of other stuff on their bodies. And not just the dwarf is dirty, but the game actually tracks the different body parts of the dwarves down to their hands, their feet, their legs, their chest, their torso, their head, even their eyeballs. So I think it's a cool little simulation element in there. I like leaving performance tweaks off, if nothing else, just for the sake of the contaminants thing. I like having those enabled. But if your game is running very slowly, you can feel free to turn that on and get a little bit of a performance bump. Last one in here is the Stone Sense isometric view. This adds an extra window to your game, which gives you a real-time 3D depiction of your fortress. And this is similar to the utility, where was it? ISO World. No, sorry, Armok Vision. Very similar to Armok Vision, except that it's real-time, so you can see dwarves running around in your fortress, and you can see the things as they're being built. So, that was an overview of the Lazy Newb pack. If you have any questions, feel free to hit them up in the comments down below. And I'm going to be making a second video companion to this that's going to go through DF Hack in detail with all of the options that are in there. And hopefully sometime this week, I'll be able to knock that out, probably Wednesday or Thursday, and then I'm going to start actually doing a playthrough of Dwarf Fortress sometime by the end of the week. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.